It's me. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to be here. It is a great opportunity to come and share some of my experience working with GoCompare in the context of complex regulatory environments. Now, I have a slightly different spin to that complex environment. And when Miles approached me, I guess his expectation was to say how difficult it is and how complicated it is and how much pain compliance is, but really that's not my experience. I think that what compliance does is actually help design be more user-centered, and I'll expand on that in a minute. So I'm head of product design for GoCompare. We are the third largest price comparison site in the UK. We're mostly known for comparing prices for car insurances. Those of you that drive will probably have used the site, or most definitely will use the site in the future. We're a relatively small team of 5 designers and 2 user researchers. And I've been with GoCompare for about 3 years. Previously, I've worked in different industries. I've also done some consulting and as a user experience consultant. So for GoCompare, in case anyone's in doubt, we are talking about the annoying mustache opera singer, not the meerkat. Right? Just so we're clear. I want to know, just show of hands, who else works in a regulated business tonight? Yay! So how many of you work in like finance, insurance-y? My people. My people. Now, GoCompare is not an insurance provider. We don't actually make insurances and we don't sell insurances, but we are regulated by exactly the same regulations as all the other insurance and finance providers out there. So even though we are technically called an insurance distributor, we still have to comply with exactly the same regulation as if we were an actual insurance provider or a bank that operates down the high street. However, the fact that we're a distributor puts us in a little bit of a different position. I guess there is a bit more leeway with compliance in how we interpret the regulation. After all, we don't have an impact on the actual insurance. This is something that a third-party company deals with. However, we have to make sure that people have the opportunity to compare prices at the fair value, and before they click on to buy insurance, they understand what they're kind of signing themselves for. So that's the reason why the regulation applies to us as well. And for those of you that work in the finance kind of insurance sector, you're very familiar with consumer duty. This is kind of the umbrella term for the regulation, which was recently introduced, and it is what kind of guides the industry at a very high level. There's more details to it. There's a lot of outcome that the regulators are looking for us to deliver. But bottom line, what it is, and I promise you this is the only slide I'm going to read for you, but they're looking that anyone, whether that's insurance provider or insurance distributors, are acting in good faith toward customers, are avoiding causing foreseeable harm to customers. This is a really important part of the regulation as far as design and product design goes, and of course enabling and supporting customers to pursue their financial objectives. So it's not enough just to tell them you have to get an insurance. It's not enough just to tell them this is the cheapest one, because the cheapest one may not enable you to achieve your financial objectives. So there's more responsibility to that than just showing the price on a price comparison site. And when you look at this, and if you've done a little bit of digging into consumer duty, it starts to sound a lot like user-centered design. This is what the regulator had in mind when they put together the regulation. Really, they want us to focus on the user 100%. and to think beyond the sale, beyond of taking the exchange of money. You give me money, I'll give you a piece of paper, right? They know that actual people with real lives, with real problems are at stake, and this is why the regulator is so keen that we kind of adhere to a regulation that really takes the customer at the heart of everything that we do. So when you think about it in this way, then hold on, that regulation actually serves me a very good deal of a favor, right? I mean, I don't have to argue anymore with stakeholders and with the managers of the company that we have to be user-centered. Advocating for design over. Like, there it is, regulator has done it for me, right? All I have to do now is interpret this, and every time that I just can't get my way, I point at the regulation. And I say, hold on, we're actually regulated, and we actually have to think about the user first, and then about the profits that we're going to make from this transaction. The regulator goes, in many ways, they've done a great job with this particular regulation. It's quite an interesting read if you are ever, struggling to fall asleep. But they've also defined really interesting aspect of defining vulnerable users in a really interesting way, which I think it kind of builds on what we as designers define as accessible design, or people with accessibility needs. So this really kind of looks at people in vulnerable situations. So you could be in a vulnerable situation at any point in time, right? Any one of us can be in a vulnerable situation. That doesn't make us disabled, that doesn't make us, that may not impact our life, our decision for life, but right here, right now, if you're too stressed, if you're overworked, if you, like me, were running for the train earlier and were preparing for the talk, you're not in a position to make a decision on your financial future, right? So really, this kind of puts a very, very interesting spin on how we define vulnerable customers, accessibility, and how we think about selling products. Sometimes this means actually slowing down things. As designers, we naturally think, oh yeah, let's just speed things up. We're gonna sell insurance in like seconds. Really, here we're talking about slowing things down. And again, this works greatly in my favor, right? A couple of years ago, we had to go and sell accessibility to the business. We had to say, okay, right, we need to redesign the entire website and get all these accessible features in it. Now, we literally have to do it. It's in the regulation. We have to provide for all users out there, regardless of their ability to use internet. So accessibility out the box. This is a screen grab from our design system. We're not 100% there. We scored around 90, depending where you assess the experience across the site. We are looking to introduce these yellow bits that you see here. I'm sure most of you are familiar as the focus states. This is what we're looking to introduce, and it's kind of the latest update of the design system. But we are truly accessible by design. So we're not thinking as accessibility as something that we add on. It is how we design. It's not an option. It has to be accessible. And here again, compliance and the regulator help. I don't have to sell this anymore at all. And another benefit, there's an investment in user research. The regulator actually says that we have to go and speak to users. So that's what we do. And we have in-house the research team, which I know is quite a luxury. A lot of businesses don't have that, either outsource or use platforms like Prolific, but I can assure you it's great to have in-house researchers. It's the best thing ever. We still use platforms, don't get me wrong, we still benefit from that, but it's fantastic when you, as a designer, don't have to do your own research, right? That's how we used to do it. We would do a little bit of research, mark our own work, and be like, oh yeah, this will do. And now the business has to invest in some proper user research. This is a screen grab from one of our sessions. Not a very flattering one, I'm sorry, I apologize for that. We are testing we're doing a comprehension test in this particular one. where we're assessing whether the users actually understand what's on screen. We're actually testing a marker for telematics policies. Anyway, it's complicated. No one gets it. Is the outcome of the research. We had to do a lot of work to explain what it actually does, so people get informed decisions. Just to kind of explain in a little bit more detail of how compliance and regulation impacts design, I just want to quickly run you through our design process. And for a lot of you, this is it's nothing new. And it's nothing that I've invented, it's the good old NN group. And I've been using their slide for quite some time now. So credit where credit's due. This is our product vision that you see there on the screen. Now, typical design process and the process that we have, it all starts, of course, with the vision, but then you kind of collect ideas somewhere, whether that's an actual ideas bank, a place where it's called dedicated ideas bank, or in smaller businesses, that's in the founder's head. The ideas bank is right there. And the ideas bank holds ideas from everywhere. User feedback, some business ideas, internal conversations, testing that we've done, and then we come up with something interesting that we may want to explore that goes into the ideas bank. But also this is where regulatory recommendations come in. For example, we have the regulators say, oh, you need to do this. That's where we store them for prioritization. So the ideas bank are ideas before prioritization. From there, they jump onto discovery, but only ideas that have been kind of roughly prioritized that are going to help us achieve our vision. They go through discovery, where we can do all sorts of things. This is the designer's playground. At the end, the idea is kind of defined, quite well vetted by compliance, and then we go on to breaking it into stories and then eventually development and release. So how does this work with compliance? So we have, as I mentioned, compliance inputs ideas into the ideas bank, and we work with them to prioritize them, to take some of those ideas forward. Now, compliance has extra weight during prioritization. Probably you can imagine that might be the case. If they say we have to do something, we have to do something, and that's really the joy of it. Most times, if they say something needs to be done, it makes a lot of sense for it to be done. How we're going to do it is a different question, right? This is where design comes in. But if they say that the regulator has suggested that we tweak the site in a certain way, then we have to do it. During the discovery, we involve them on every stage. They work alongside us through the research piece, through the ideation, through iterations. They are quite involved in our case, and we quite like that because we get feedback constantly rather than one-off at the end or specification at the beginning and then miscommunication somewhere along the lines. I often call them the third designer because they're so involved during the process, and their feedback does impact the experience that we put out there at the end. They do vet the ideas formally. They have to sign up everything that goes out, and this has to do with risk. We were talking about it with Greg and earlier. Compliance is ultimately responsible for some of the things that go out there and users interact with, so they kind of have a little record that they record everything. But at this point, we're usually in a very good place where we are happy as designers. They're happy as compliance, so it's just a formal sign-off. And then it goes into development. Super, so I'm gonna run through a couple of examples of what does that mean in practice. So this is an example of implementing a feature that was introduced by the regulators. So a while back, I think about a year, maybe 2 years ago, the regulators said, hold on, annual price of insurance versus monthly prices, there's an interest charged. that's not communicated. In the price comparison platforms, you can't see that. You usually see the monthly payment and you think that's what you pay per month, and you think it's the same amount as the annual, but it's not, it's different. There is an interest, and that's not communicated. The regulator said it has to be communicated, and yes, it makes a lot of sense, and yes, of course we want to implement that, and yes, of course it's in the interest of the designers to make a better experience. So this is a really good example of where something that was driven by the regulator actually resulted in a better experience altogether. Improved comparison experience by monitoring providers, so compliance together with some of our commercial teams monitor providers constantly. What they found out is that just up until last year, we had only 4 parameters kind of listed on the comparison side that we compared insurances on kind of at the high level. There's much more detail, but at the high level, we only used 4 parameters. So insurance providers started to hide the windscreen cover and take it off the policies. You would assume it's in, it actually wasn't. So you had to do a lot of digging to find it out, and that was a way for them to really be quite naughty. So working again with compliance and with our commercial teams, we lifted that and included it in the comparison experience at the moment. And in the process, you can see how we've changed the experience, made it easier for users. The other problem with this was we took the opportunity to solve this as designers, as people were clicking on these, they thought they were buttons, because guess what, they look like buttons. And so we've changed that. I've mentioned how easy it is to prioritize solutions sometimes when you have compliance on board. And it's great when we have consistent user feedback about a certain feature. Compliance really gets behind that, and we're able to prioritize that. And you all know that it's very difficult sometimes to prioritize user feedback as much as designers scream, this needs fixing. And the things that we fix are not like fundamentally wow, amazing stuff. Like what we did here, users offered feedback that sometimes they were comparing price for the old cars because it's not really clear. You can easily oversee the fact that these might be 2 different vehicles. So based on the feedback, we thought, well, we'll tweak it a little bit and we'll add the registration number just to make it a little bit obvious and kind of tidy up a little bit the whole quote card. And compliance loved it. They were like, this is amazing, let's get it out there right now. And I was amazed how quickly we were able to release that one. From design to release, it was less than a month, which for us is amazing. Improving features based on compliance feedback. This is sometimes compliance can just, because you know, the way compliance express themselves is not like designers have all sorts of tools to express our views of the world, whereas compliance only has word and text, right? So sometimes all they say is like, just put all that text in there. And our job is to take that and turn it into a meaningful experience. Now, in the first version here, we thought we've done the job. We were like, okay, there's this little flag here, and it says something, and drop down, right? We have the text that compliance wants in. But they said, no, it's not that clear. So we ended up with this, which really actually does a better job. But it's this conversation with compliance that helped us get there. This just wasn't a good design. It didn't really do the job we set to do. And in that conversation with compliance, we got to ultimately a better outcome. So just to wrap up, contrary to some other people, I actually love working with compliance. It also helps that my compliance team is just lovely people to work with. They help us be truly user-centered just by implementing the regulation, which is just magical. We are able to implement accessibility by design. It's included in our design systems, and that's how we just design everything. Accessibility is never a question. They make it easier to prioritize improvements, particularly small tweaks that we know are going to make a huge difference, but are very difficult to sell to stakeholders because they look the tiniest thing in the experience. And working with compliance rather than against compliance, for us, it results in the overall better outcomes for users. Thank you so much. That's
Thank you. Thanks for that, everybody. Thank you very much.
And just to share this little plug, so if you want to connect, find me on LinkedIn, I'm more than happy to. Together with a friend here, Kat, we are co-organizing Latest at UX Bristol. It's a fantastic community, and we are having social drinks tomorrow in Bristol. In case you are in and about Bristol, feel free to join us. It will be amazing to see you there. That's me.
Awesome. Well, we have a few minutes still for some questions. And I have one hand already, and 2 hands and 3 hands. That's wonderful. That's probably the lot. So good job getting in there first, nice and early. Do you want to come down here for the next one?
Should I take it? You talked a lot about working with compliance. So are your compliance people internal, and also what's their relationship with like the external compliance, and how does that all work? I'm just kind of quite curious.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have an internal compliance team. They work with us on one hand, product quite closely, but they also work to report activities, compliance-related activities with the board, and then report externally. As I said, we have a fantastic team of compliance experts. They really help us do our job better rather than kind of constantly try and get in another page A4 legal document in there, which is great. And I appreciate that's certainly probably not the case for everybody, but we're quite lucky.
Have you got any, maybe on a backup of that, have you got any tips on how you might advocate for internal compliance from a UX perspective?
Advocate for
a company investing in bringing in compliance professionals.
It makes perfect sense. I cannot imagine it in any other way. They need to know the product inside out, and they need to work with you like daily on all projects. You can't just have. It's similar like outsourcing design, right? I mean, you outsource it for a month, and then what? It's the same with compliance. They're gonna consult you on one project, and then what? Right? It makes a lot of sense for this to be in-house.
Thanks for your question. Next.
Neil, thank you for the presentation. It sounds really interesting that compliance helps you in so many ways, but how do you rely on the information that you get from compliance? Like, how do you know that that's the best thing that we can do for our users?
Yeah. Thank you. That's a really good question. Now, I like to think about it as a conversation when we work with compliance, right? As I said, they have a certain way of expressing what they feel strongly about, and usually that comes in a lot of text, right? But as designers, we know that users just are not going to read that, so it's our job to make that more user-friendly, and that's where we have to collaborate really closely. And I think early on when I joined and kind of started building that relationship with that team, I think early on we had some really strong wins where they had a recommendation, we've implemented it, and the success was really, really obvious. We documented it in a number of ways, like reduced feedback and like a number of completed questionnaires has increased. So it took time, but over time we were able to push back and say, hold on, this doesn't make a lot of sense, but we can help you make this compliant and in the best possible way.
Thank you.
So I work in financial services, so I know exactly, I was laughing at a lot of things you were saying, really relatable. So my question's more related around ways of work. So do you have a designated person from the compliance team? Because we have the issue of everyone's really busy, no one really prioritizes, coming to our ideation sessions and research, like everyone on the email says yes, but no one actually attends. So how do you work with your compliance team?
Yeah, they do. It's quite a large compliance team, actually. Well, I say quite large. I don't think they're more than 6 people, 7 maybe. But we do have a dedicated compliance product person. Not only one. I think we actually have 2 people, and they look look after different parts of the product. It's not only car insurance, GoCompare compares all sorts of things, including financial services. So one person is not enough. Often you need more than one people. But yes, they do have a dedicated person, and that helps a lot.
Sorry, just to follow up on that, did you request it, or how did
It was already there. Lucky for me. But I feel that working with them and kind of collaborating more closely, they also appreciate that, and they understand that this is the best way for them to set themselves up, so they're more aligned working closer with the product rather than having someone part-time signing things off, because it just doesn't make sense. They need to be close to the product to understand what is the best solution in a particular scenario.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.